Hello, World of Tria listeners. We're all back. I'm here with Kelly Surtees and Cassandra Tyndall, and we're here to bring you all the astrology for quite a big week. This is the week beginning the 6th of January, 2020. We're here, we're in it. And yeah, how are you gals both? How's life?
Well, we're all on the same continent this time.
Yeah.
Yay!
I just flew back into Australia last night, which is very exciting. Very exciting. Are you happy to have us all closer together, Cass?
Always. What can I say? The gang's back together. That's really the only time I get sentimental, apart from my son. But, for a good, 15 years now, it's been you girls.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
So it is always exciting.
Totally.
How are you girls going? How are you, Leash?
Yeah, good.
Yep.
Yeah. Looking forward to, we're pre-recording, so I'm looking forward to a bit of a break.
Yeah.
But I'm definitely looking forward to this week because this is the week we actually do catch up in the flesh, ready for the retreat.
Yes. Yes. This is like the restart after the holiday break.
Yep. Although I don't think it's going to feel like a restart for most people. I think we're all going to feel a bit like you, Kel, in jet lag.
Yes, I am a little jet lag today. What did you say, Leash, before we started? Like the Bardo, the tunnel or something?
Yeah, the Bardo period between eclipses that I think Demetra George refers to, and Austin Coppock as well, that kind of weird time tunnel of like, what day is it? What year is it? Where am I? Who am I? Kind of sense between that solar eclipse that happened on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and then that the one that's happening this week, the lunar eclipse. So, but before that, you've got something to tell us about, don't you, Kel?
Oh yeah. Jumping straight in. Yeah. I know there's a lot going on this week, and we will get into that. But I am excited about the Jupiter South Node aspect, which is happening Wednesday, January 8th. In Canada and the States, and I think that's Thursday, January 9th for Australia, for you gals. We'll all be here together, actually. I shouldn't say for you gals, for us in Australia. So I like this for a few reasons. One, it's the last of the quote-unquote Marie Kondo type aspects that we've been dealing with for about a year now, as the planets are very, Saturn, and we've had the sun and all the other faster-moving planets move over the South Node there. And that's created a big energy to do with release and letting go, literally, that purging or that purifying. It's a very cathartic type of energy, I think, the South Node, and it's a good chance to let go of things. Many of us have let go of stuff physically, but I think psychologically or emotionally or energetically, we've been letting go of fear or old thought patterns, even old habits that have been draining us. So I think so it's good to do that, but it's also nice to know we're coming to the end of that process, I think, which is really good. And the second reason that I look forward to this is one of the takes on the South Node in the Indian tradition of astrology is that it has a spiritualising influence. So it tends to shift our perspective onto more existential type topics rather than material accumulative type topics. And I'm really curious to experience Jupiter going over the South Node just to see how that brings through perspective or beliefs or philosophies or even ideologies for each of us individually that kind of then become the foundation for our choices going forward. So it's a little bit of like getting inspired so that we can have a meta framework or a more meaningful point of view to put our life into, if you like. So I think that can be potentially a bit bigger than we expect. When you shift your perspective, it does force you to question things you've been doing for a while, why you're doing certain things. And then, of course, it's happening at the start of the year, whether you want to keep doing those things or whether you want to shake things up. So, yeah, that's the aspect that I'm quite curious about for this week.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about this one? Have you got similar thoughts or different thoughts about it?
Yeah, I definitely do have similar thoughts. And, as we mentioned at the start, this is something we're pre-recording. So what I have noticed in the lead up to, Christmas and the holiday season overall is that people are either opting to not do gifts or I've seen a lot of gift vouchers, like even in my own business, plenty of gift vouchers have come through. Other people are buying tickets to things or things that you can do together. I feel that the whole Capricorn energy and I guess a way to sort of bookmark the end of a massive cleansing Capricorn type of year, it really has been a feeling of less stuff, more experience, as opposed to just, the 5-minute pleasure and then in the bin, so to speak. So I think that will probably be an energy that, of course, will permeate the week, but also, I guess, the year moving forward, being, this sort of sets the tone for how we can get more of that Jupiter growth through less, or through, I guess, I know I've said this before, and it is really one of my favorite things right now, is in order to get something or obtain something, which is a bit Jupiter, whether that is physical, material, or experiential, coming from a ground zero point, what do I already have that can get me to that next level or go to that next place? And I love this is a real resourceful type of energy too, where we're not just riding on a wing and a prayer, it's creating something from what we may already have to move forward, or to get more, whatever that more might mean for you, more perspective or more joy, or for some it might just be more material goals too. So I think this will be a very kind of nice grounded energy for Jupiter, if it can get any more grounded right now, but from a grounded point that it can bounce back up from, or creating that nice platform from where you can then springboard from, whatever your Jupiter or your Capricorn stuff is for 2020. Lishi, do you have any ideas around this?
Yeah, I agree with both of you, and I loved the spiritual aspect you were talking about, Kel, and it just reminds me a lot of the Buddhist and the Tao, the idea of detachment, of not being attached to physical things, and realizing that, I don't know, there's this sense of when we are colorless, when we are not attached too much to relationships or physical things, we can actually just be in the flow, and we can allow things to come through us. It's like we can be colored by things by being colorless. I'm not sure if that makes sense, but it's that sense of when we can let go of expectations, of judgment on ourselves and on others, then we can allow things to be as they are, and we can have respect for what the situation is, and we can honor what is needed. And I think these are very important Capricorn ideals, that we can just be with where things are right now and not have to be worried about, well, I didn't get the present that I wanted, or I didn't get achieve the success I thought I would in 2019. It's like, okay, well, this is the reality. This is where I am. Where do I want to move from for here? And how can I let go of my, that monkey mind or that ego noise that may be going, but you should be this or you should be that. It's like there's no shoulds in this situation. There just is what there is. And that allows what you were talking about, Cass. It's like, okay, come into this situation, have a look at what I've actually got and grow from here. I remember once when I was in India doing a yoga retreat kind of thing, and every morning I had to walk from where I was staying along a pathway between houses, and there was a family living there in a tent that had nothing. And every morning I'd stop and say hello and kind of play with the kids for a little while. And on the last morning I was coming through, they offered me a bowl of rice for my breakfast. And the friend who was with me, who was an Indian girl, she said, please eat it, because they have, this is their way of respecting who you are and what you've brought and how you've wanted to connect. And yes, they may not be able to afford it, and it may take from their rice for the day, but they wanted to honour you, and that's all they had to do it. And I was just, I was that simplicity and that importance and that respect of connection, and that they gave from nothing, but they still wanted to give. There's that sense of that Jupiter in Capricorn. It's like, I still want to give. I'll give what I can. They didn't have anything else to honour me with, so that's what they wanted to do, give this bowl of rice, because that's what they had. So, yeah, there's that sense of just coming from where you've got, but that respect and that honouring that comes with the Capricorn energy. So, yeah, that's my sense.
Love it. I mean, that's a really beautiful point of view too, like giving what you can. I think generosity is such a big Jupiter word, and Jupiter on the South Node, there is a quality of like Jupiter is quite depleted here. It's already a little depleted in the sign of Capricorn, and then the South Node is like, I've either given everything already and I don't have a lot left. But there is, I love that story, Leash, of like, just this is what I can give, so I will give you that, and make an offering and an honoring with that. It's beautiful.
Yeah. So that's the South Node, and it feels in many ways that it's kind of leading on from that South Node eclipse, and this is the turning point. I mean, yes, we had the Sun conjunct the South Node last week, but it feels like this is that last trigger to that South Node so we can be ready to move into the North Node.
Which is happening in just a couple of days.
Yes, exactly. So you were going to talk about the lunar eclipse, weren't you, Kaz?
Yeah, I was actually. So the lunar eclipse, when we reflect back on this eclipse cycle, poor old Cancer has been a little bit overshadowed. So the Capricorn pull has just been so strong. So we've only just really had a little glimpse of, I think, my opinion, little glimpses of North Node potential here. But now Jupiter's just had, his big bang on the South Node. We're now moving into a lunar eclipse. And so we can get to the other side, the Cancer side, which is about the nurturing and the caring and less about the material perspectives. And a lunar eclipse is always a little bit more dramatic. It's a little bit more emotional, and gives us that opportunity to look to the other part of our charts and of our lives that oppose that Capricorn energy. I think sometimes when we look at eclipses, it can be really beneficial to also start, look at the houses that are activating across your chart. And this is the pull to the other side. So where you may feel some drainage or leakage or depletion, this is the other part of your life where you've got that opportunity to fill your cup. So I'm personally looking forward to that. And just to have a little bit of, I guess, a reprieve or a break from the Capricorn crazy, which is kind of what it's been, and just having that beautiful full moon relatively close to the North Node there is a little bit of a glimpse or a portal into the future. Now, I often find that sometimes with eclipses, it is that kind of, time that doesn't feel fully tangible. It's a different feel, as we've already mentioned a few times. And so it's sort of like the full moon on the North Node is like a push forward, or I sometimes feel like it's a cosmic hand, like an invisible hand that's pushing you in a direction where perhaps there's been a lot of energy or focus on. It's almost the idea of hope or positivity on the other side. And I know eclipses aren't really about hope or positivity, but with the full moon in Cancer on the North Node, there is, and I guess the moon is sort of shadowing the sun here. So she's taking prime and center stage, and does offer a little bit of hope perhaps around, or potential around, the Cancer side of your life. So what do you girls think about this one?
Well, I do always like the eclipse vibes. I love what both of you are saying about that kind of bardo, liminal in-between space. Because, the light of the moon, the idea of the eclipse is that idea of the being covered or being blocked temporarily. And I always find when the obvious light gets blocked, there is sort of internal subtle things, things that are kind of in the shadows that we don't normally see when there's a bright light calling out. Like, the full moon, it pulls focus like a bright light in a room. But when that goes off, you can see things that are only otherwise at the edge of your awareness. So I do think, and this is more sort of from an experiential kind of intuitive perspective, but I think there is the opportunity to check in or become aware of things that we might normally not tap into. And yeah, I think what you're saying, Cass, about the Cancer, like this is different to Capricorn. It's like the complete opposite, just literally. And one thing I've been noticing throughout the last 12 months or so, as the moon has been joining with the North Node in Cancer, it's created this beautiful energy about spotlighting people and communities or connections that are about how you're going to move forward. So it's like those alliances or collaborations that are where people are on the same wavelength, or you're like passionate about the same things. We might, dare I even say, there's that sense of like destiny of let's work together on this thing. So I'm really interested. This feels a bit of a peak in those sort of moon North Node Cancer kind of themes of who's the tribe, who's the community, where's that feeling of belonging and connection, and how is that nurturing growth that is like, is it that nourishment feeling for all of us? Yeah. So I know it's dramatic and it's an eclipse and all of the things, but I'm secretly kind of looking forward to it.
It almost feels like a soothing eclipse or a balm to the problems.
Yeah.
Like that's, I mentioned the hope kind of situation a few times, and maybe that wasn't quite the right adjective, but I think just any pull from the Capricorn energy is going to feel like, a little bit, I guess, lubricating or soothing at some level. So, the moon in her fullness, in her home sign on the North Node, those are qualities that, I'm going to hedge my bets on that. So, yeah, it'll be a bit nicer than the solar eclipse, I shall imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my sense of it is too that, yes, there'll be the emotions there and things will come up, but it's like if we've detached from all this stuff, to do with the South Node, it's like, well, what attachments can we now form? Cancer's the family. Cancer's the home, that nurturing vibe, and often can be about the mother. I always think about the uterus and the waters of the uterus with Cancer. It's like that protection that the mother creates in her body to grow, so the child can grow within it. And so the first attachment we often make is to the mother through her nervous system. So this is like, okay, well, we've let go of a lot of attachments that don't work for us, whether they're relationships that don't work for us or work situations or material attachments. What attachments can we now make that are a lot more informed, a lot more conscious, that will support us into the future, into the direction that we want to go in? And I know that this can be, it's not like the South Node's a bad malevolent point and the North Node's a good one. It doesn't work like that. But I do know that the North Node is that chance to where we want to strive towards, where we want to push towards, things that we hunger for, that we want to be satiated with. And it's like we know what we look at the world around us, we see what happens when we strive too much for abundance. Things get out of control. But it's like, where in your life, in that Cancer area right now, could do with that abundance, could do with those attachments that will support us and nurture and nourish us. I do also really want to highlight this eclipse because I'm still seeing it around all the time. This is not an intention setting energy. Eclipses are not about setting intentions for the future. This will still be about purging and purifying and letting go, same as the South Node eclipse. So, that's why I can't, I'm seeing it everywhere. Yeah, use this eclipse as a chance to set intentions. No, please don't, because you just don't know. Eclipses are too crazy and things can really fly back at you in a way that you don't want. You may get what you want and realize that it's not what you want, or it may come with a side dish of crazy that you have to deal with to be able to use what you got. So, yeah, I just want to emphasize that point there.
And I guess given the time of year that these eclipses are taking place, it can already be a sensitized season for many people. And I know we all have our own individual social media bubbles depending on our individual algorithms and what happens. But I know, at least with some of the accounts that I follow on Instagram in particular, there's been a lot of themes this year about trauma, ancestry, genetic healing, and of course reparenting. So healing the old wounds and reparenting yourself. And I think with this eclipse in Cancer is an opportunity to perhaps do some of that, maybe inner child work, perhaps some of your own reparenting things. I know myself personally, when I need to do a little bit of that, I often go back to the food I loved when I was a kid, and I will bake that stuff or I eat that stuff. And I don't know, that's just my thing. But, whatever it is, if you always wanted to dance as a kid and you never got to do that, or whatever it is. So that's what I come back to, that idea of nurturing and care. And that could either be on your own, if that's what you need to do, or, as you said, Kel, with your tribe or your clan or whoever is family to you. So there is that opportunity to set, I'm not going to go so far as to say new intentions, because I don't think it's the right energy to do that, but perhaps to recalibrate the way you view family or the connections you already have, or perhaps gain some new perspective or some new ideas around that moving forward.
Yeah. How you bring in the care, how you bring in the compassion, how you bring in the empathy.
Yeah.
All those things as well, especially towards ourselves, because often we're our own worst critics. So I know that we all follow the holistic psychologist, and there's another lady, Dr. Rebecca Ray. They both put some awesome things on there about all that stuff you're talking about, Cass, inner child, attachment patterns, boundaries. And this is another thing about Cancer. This is the ability to say no, set up that boundary so you can protect and grow something, say yes to it being able to grow up. So, this has been another theme about this whole of this year is boundaries. Where do you need to set them? What do you need to do? And with Mercury so tangled up in this eclipse and, so much a part of it, I feel like we will really be able to speak out the messages or perhaps hear the messages from other people as a part of this too. Yeah. There'll be a lot of communication around this.
Yeah, I can't help but think all the reparenting healing work is so connected to the strong Cancer Capricorn axis that has been so heavily, because it's like the tenderness, the inner child, the emotional stuff, which is all moon, Cancer. And then also the boundaries, I always think of the boundaries as like the Capricorn Saturn and where do we stay soft and supple, but where do we need to be firm? And I mean, you guys both have kids. I've got nieces and nephews. It's that weird dance between giving all the love, but sometimes having to set those boundaries or say no. But
that's what love looks like.
Well, it's totally, I think we forget sometimes that boundaries are such a critical, necessary part of any kind of love, basically.
Yeah, I mean, I know as the Cancer of the group, and my friendships and things that haven't lasted the distance, whether it was this year, last century, whatever, it's those people that didn't call bullshit when they saw it, and I think that tough love is the Cancer way. And my grandmother had a Cancer moon, and I've been rewatching Outlander, and they said a similar thing. They said a similar thing in one of their episodes. It's like my nana always used to say, I can say what I want about my own family, but heaven help anybody else who tries to.
Yeah. Yep.
So it is that sort of I think Cancer has its own kind of bit of skewed boundary. If you're in the circle, you're in the circle, but if you're out, then you're not out. And I think that's the thing, like being able, the communication, the Mercury piece, that is really the key with the boundaries or what have you. And like saying no to my son, for example, who's also a Cancer, I'm saying no because.
Yeah.
So they don't just hear no and hear rejection and feel rejection. I'm saying no because, mummy wants to spend her money on something more special rather than this thing you just want right now or whatever it is. So, yeah, I think that's the being the tenderness to show the care rather than just erecting the Saturnian wall and keeping everybody out. Let them in, but tell them why you're not getting the thing, or I can't do this for you right now. I'm not buying you that, whatever it is. So, yeah, it's such a big thing.
It's changing the relationship between the two rather than having either happening in extremes.
Yeah. I mean, we've all had those situations in our life where we break up with somebody and then all our friends, in quotation marks, say, oh, we never really liked him or her anyway. And then like, well, that would have helped in the early days, you know what I mean? I may not have listened to you and done the thing anyway, but I would have appreciated it in hindsight, and I think we've all kind of had those situations where it might have hurt at the time, but if they were a real friend, that you would have survived that situation. So I remember, I think it was maybe your 27th birthday, Kel, we were having an Indian dinner in Sydney. And Leishy and I started having this heated debate. Well, what to other people might have seemed a bit heated.
What, the Aries moon and the Libra moon. Yeah.
Exactly, right. And don't forget the Mars and Venus too. One of your other friends, Kel, came back to you and said, oh, my God, I can't believe your friends, they could have this really respectful differing opinion and bouncing off each other. And I think that's probably, you know, as a part of our water trio, we can do those flows and understand our waters go in different directions sometimes, and not taking things so personally. And I think that's where we do get mucked up in family dynamics or friendship dynamics, and that's where the boundaries can really help, where you take that, you know, the pause and the step back and like, is this actually true, or is just my mind telling me that, you know, and that it's, you know, triggering something from the past or something that's unhealed within us. And it really, when we feel that anxiety or that desire to win the argument or whatever, it's really more than just the argument itself. And I think that was something that we could just really do for each other. But we don't all have those kind of connections where we have that level of honesty. Yeah. So, and I think this eclipse can perhaps get us back to that place with the people who are inside our circles.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. And this is the thing, you know, having that Mercury Cazimi there too. So the Mercury Cazimi is about 4 hours, literally. It's exact 4 hours beforehand. Yeah. So it's going to be happening right, you know, through this whole thing with the eclipse. Exactly what you're talking about there, Cass. I've seen a number of situations in this year where the generation gap is so big these days that the younger generation are getting frustrated with the older generation because they're stuck in their thinking, and the older generation is saying the younger generation's too, you know, not thinking about consequences enough, or they're, you know, distracted all the time. But that respectful piece that you're talking about, with which Mercury in Capricorn can do, is the idea of how can we connect in a way that has respect and has understanding and has empathy, that all of us can then still agree to disagree, but at least listen, at least try and have some understanding, at least try and come from that place where it's like, you know, for example, a granddaughter arguing with her grandfather who she sees as racist, for example. You know, he grew up in a time and an era where that was what it was, and he may be struggling his hardest to not be, but if the young granddaughter's going, rah, 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 you know, it's like he's only going to get on the defensive. So it's like, how can your messages be honest, honouring and respectful, and also bring some wisdom? You know, this is that, you know, the maturity, because the grandfather also has a massive amount of life experience he could share with her around other issues. But if she chooses to just get upset around that particular facet of her grandfather in his life, she'll miss out on a lot. And vice versa, if he's not respecting where she's coming from and seeing that the new way of doing is a lot better for everybody, then he'll lose sight of that too. So it's, I don't know, I think it's an important piece of this Mercury Cazimi, is just respectful dealings, honest dealings, simple words of trying not to push things onto somebody else too much, but just really thinking about where they're at, and honouring that. So, yeah.
Interesting. I like
what about
that.
you girls?
Kel?
Yeah, Mercury Cazimi, so what is it, like 19 degrees Capricorn?
20. Yeah. Oh, 19. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Friday in the States and Canada, Saturday in Australia, as you said, like just before the eclipse. I always like Mercury Cazimi for getting some clear ideas, getting some good insights. It's not a lot of external stuff, I find, but it tends to bring me some inner clarity. Oh, I'm like, that's how I'm going to handle that situation, or this is the decision I'll make around this. So it's a little bit of that kind of, I mean, you know, the planet is dark, but it's a sense of, you know, the insight or the ideas or the seed planting that's going to guide me in the days and weeks ahead. So I like to try and keep a little notebook handy on Mercury Cazimi days, just to, you know, jot down any clarifying ideas or thoughts that I have. But I do think, I mean, in general, communication is such a big theme this week with, you know, Mercury Cazimi, but Mercury, of course, touching into all the other stuff that's going on. So I do think, you know, communication is really a big focus. What about you, Cass?
Yeah, I always love a good Mercury Cazimi. I agree with you around the inner sort of light bulb moments, but also from a practical perspective, I find it can be really a great opportunity to send that email or have that conversation you've been avoiding, or do that thing that you might have been procrastinating on about. I feel like it's a real little mini window of opportunity where communication or Mercury style issues can kind of be supercharged or really really quite favorable. And they may not necessarily be, I know it myself. I've sent an email, for an important email and not expecting a favorable answer out of it. And then lo and behold, a few weeks later, a few days later, whatever happens, I get a better outcome than what I anticipated. If it meant I had to have a tricky conversation about an invoice or money I'm owed, or I want to negotiate that thing or whatever it is, I find that can be a helpful thing. And I just think, given the time of year it's occurring, the sign that it's in, it might also really be helpful just to get some inner clarity around structures or procedures, or even just your calendar about how you want to approach 2020, and just, organizing your life in a sense. So I think that's kind of like a little window of potential in this week that's kind of like in a funny zone, a bit of a twilight zone, isn't it? So yeah,
because then Mercury then leads from there into the Saturn-Pluto conjunction, because it will conjunct both those planets before it heads there. Now, we're not going to be we are aware that the Saturn-Pluto conjunction is on Sunday, but we've already spent a whole episode talking about this. So at the end of this episode, there will be a link to click to watch that, or just have a look for, if you're listening to this on a podcast, just search for Saturn-Pluto conjunction with the water trio, and you'll be able to get that episode and listen to that to get a really deep dive into what that energy is. So, yeah. So, girls, did you have anything you wanted to share about this week?
I'm like, it's the first week back, isn't it? So I'm going to be teaching in Sydney on Saturday, January 11th. So if anybody is in Sydney and wants to come along and do some year ahead planning with astrology, I'll be teaching about the technique of annual perfections, as well as looking at the year ahead transits. And that info will be on my website, kellysastrology.com. What about you gals?
Leishi?
I am, I think I've got like one client consult space left for this week, and then we've got our retreat. So I'm just super looking forward to that. And then at the end of that week, I'm actually away for the next few weeks. So I'm heading off on a big road trip.
This is last week of work for you, isn't it? Before a bit of a summer holiday.
Yeah, I'm actually leaving the day of the eclipse to go and spend some time with family and friends who are like family. So not sure if leaving on the day of eclipse is a good idea, but hey, I'm going to roll with the punches on that. So yeah, that's for me. What about you, Cass?
Well, of course, it's the I can't even talk today. Water Trio Retreat Week.
Yes.
And client consults and things like that. But there's a lots in the pipeline for January, so stay tuned for that.
Cool. All right. Well, wishing everyone a happy eclipse week of
crazy
hopefully it's settled and not as crazy as it could be.
Shifting perspectives this week for sure.
Yeah, totally. A big turning point. All right. We'll see you later. Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Bye.